too big. Just sit on it, the cowboy said calmly, right before she felt it move under her. Wyoming Territory, 1887. The wind off the Bighorn Mountains carried a bite even in late spring, and Abigail Whitaker felt it straight through her worn wool coat as she rode the last mile to Cole Brennan's ranch. Her fingers ached on the reins. 3 weeks had passed since they buried her husband, Tom, and in those 3 weeks someone had cut every fence on the north pasture, dumped creosote in her water trough, and left a note nailed to her door that read, "A woman alone don't belong on good grass." She had ignored the first note. She had patched the second fence herself. But when she found the third note weighted down by a dead jackrabbit with its throat cut, she saddled up before sunrise and pointed her mare toward the one place every soul in Johnson County said never to ride unless you were ready to trade your fear for something harder. Cole Brennan spread lay in a wide bowl of land ringed by cottonwoods. No dogs barked. No hands waved. Only smoke rose thin and straight from the stone chimney, and one tall man in a dark coat was tossing hay to a pen of yearlings. He didn't look up until her shadow crossed his boots. "Morning, Mrs. Whitaker," he said, voice low, like distant thunder that hadn't decided to break yet. Abby slid off her horse before her courage could cool. "Mr. Brennan, I need help, and I'm told you're the only man Silas Rutledge hasn't bought or buried." Cole forked the last flake of hay, leaned the pitchfork against the corral, and finally met her eyes. They were the gray of winter sky over snow, and they studied her the way a man studies a trail he's ridden before and never liked. "Rutledge wants your place with a railroad spur," he said. "Not a question. He wants me gone any way he can manage it." Cole glanced toward the mountains as if the answer might be written there. Then he asked the one thing no one else had dared. "You ready for whatever truth comes with asking me to ride beside you, Abby Whitaker?" She swallowed. "I buried a man I loved in a pine box. I reckon I can stand whatever else the ground wants to give up." Something softened behind his eyes, just a flicker, then was gone. "Pack what you need for a few days. We'll ride to your ranch now." By the time they reached the Whitaker place, the sun was high and merciless. Cole moved like a man who'd spent half his life looking for sign. Crouched by the ruined trough, ran a finger through the black film of poison, studied boot prints that didn't belong to Abby or Tom. When he straightened, his mouth was a hard line. "Same notched heel I've seen on Rutledge's foreman," he said. Abby's stomach turned over. "Then it's war." "It's been war," Cole answered. "They just hadn't told you the rules yet." They worked through the afternoon, mending what could be mended, burning what had been poisoned. By dusk, Abby was bone-tired, her palms raw. Cole noticed the big bale of hay someone had dragged onto the porch and left leaning against the wall at a strange angle. "That wasn't there yesterday," she said. Cole tapped the bale with his boot. "Too heavy for you to wrestle alone." "It's too big. Just sit on it a second so I can see if the braces underneath are cracked." Abby gave a tired laugh. "You giving me orders now, Cole Brennan? Only when it'll keep you in one piece." She stepped forward, lifted the hem of her split riding skirt, and started to lower herself onto the prickly straw. That was when she felt it, a dry, papery shake, like seeds in a gourd, coming from inside the bale itself. The sound rattled again, closer, angry. Abby froze. Cole's arm shot out, caught her around the waist, and yanked her backward so hard her boots left the porch boards. She collided with the solid wall of his chest. His heart hammered against her shoulder blade. A thick rattlesnake, big as her forearm, slid out of the broken bale, tongue flickering, tail buzzing like a hornet. Cole's coat cleared leather before Abby could draw a breath. One sharp crack split the evening. The snake dropped limp across the porch rails, still twitching but finished. The smell of gunpowder hung between them. Abby's knees threatened to fold. Cole kept his arm around her until she found her balance, then let go slowly, like he didn't trust the ground to hold her yet. He crouched, lifted the dead snake with the barrel of his pistol, and turned it so the fading light caught the scales. Around the tail, just above the rattle, was a raw red groove, thin and deliberate. "Rope mark," he said quietly. "Somebody toted this fellow in a burlap sack and tucked him in that bale for you to find the hard way." Abby stared at the mark until her eyes burned. When she spoke, her voice came out steady as iron. Then we stopped waiting for the next gift. Cole's slow smile held no humor at all. Tonight, we give one back. The plan was simple and terrifying. Abby rode into town near sundown. Let her shoulders sag. Let her eyes look hollow. She stopped at the mercantile long enough for Rutledge's men to notice, linger by the livery, so the foreman with a notched heel could overhear her telling the hostler she was bone-weary of fighting alone. In the dusty street, she even let Silas Rutledge himself tip his hat and ask how she was faring. "Not well, Mr. Rutledge," she said, voice trembling just enough. Cole Brennan looked things over, but he's gone back to his own spread. I'm thinking of selling before something worse happens." Rutledge's smile was thin and satisfied. Smart woman. She rode home with her chin high and murder in her heart. Back at the ranch, Cole and two of his most trusted hands melted into the shadows. One behind the windmill, one in the barn loft, Cole himself just inside the corral gate. Abby left the front door ajar, lit a single lamp, and sat at the kitchen table with Tom's old Navy Colt across her lap. She waited. The night smelled of sage and danger. Hoofbeats came soft and slow. 3 riders walking their horses up the draw so the house dog, if there had been one, wouldn't bark. Abby's pulse drummed in her ears. She heard a boot on the porch, the creak of the door pushing wider. A man's shape filled the doorway, bandana pulled high, hat low. "Time to leave, Mrs. Whitaker. Mr. Rutledge don't want to hurt you, just wants you gone." Abby stood slowly. "Tell Mr. Rutledge he can come fetch me himself." The man took one step inside, and that was all he managed. Cole's voice came out of the dark like a judge's gavel. "Hands where I can see them. Slow." Lantern light flared as Cole's men stepped into view. Rifles glinted. The intruder's courage drained out the soles of his boots. He raised shaking hands. A second man bolted from behind the barn, only to run smack into Cole's foreman. The third tried to wheel his horse and run, but a loop of rope settled over his shoulders and yanked him to the dirt. It was over in minutes. They tied the 3 together on the porch like calves for branding. The youngest, barely 20, couldn't stop shaking. When Cole asked, calm and cold, why a man would plant a live rattler for a widow lady, the boy broke. Rutledge said scare her off or worse, he whispered. Said the new rail spur goes right through the section. Said a woman won't fight if she's afraid enough. Paid us $50 extra for the snake. Abby felt the words like brands. By first light, the sheriff and a posse of reluctant but grim-faced citizens rode out to Rutledge's fancy White House on the hill. They dragged him out in his silk robe, still shouting about his rights. The confession, signed and witnessed, was more than enough. 2 days later, the town looked different. Men who once crossed the street to avoid poor widow Whitaker now touched their hats when she rode past. Children waved. Old Mrs. Caldwell pressed a jar of chokecherry jam into her hands and said, "You hold that land proud, Abby girl." But the best moment came at sunset. Abby found Cole on her porch, their porch now, though neither had said aloud, sitting on the same hay bale, now swept clean and dragged back to its proper place. The mountains glowed rose and gold behind him. She sat beside him without asking. For a long while they only listened to evenings settling over the ranch, a horse nickering, wind in the cottonwoods, the faint jingle of the spur when Cole shifted. Finally he spoke, voice soft as the dusk. Land's got a way of showing folks who they really are. Abby looked at the calluses on her own palms, then at his. "I used to think I married Tom because he made me feel safe. Turns out safe was never what I needed. I needed to know I could stand when everything else fell." Cole reached over, slow enough she could have moved away. She didn't. He turned her hand palm up, traced the new ridges of hard-earned strength with one careful thumb, then folded her fingers gently inside his much larger ones. "I reckon," he said, "2 people who both learned to stand might could lean a little, if they felt like it." Abby smiled, the first real one in months, and leaned her head against his shoulder. The sun slipped behind the bighorns, painting the sky in fire and promise. Somewhere in the grass a lone cricket started to sing, like it knew the storm had passed and something new was beginning. And on a quiet Wyoming porch, Beneath a sky wide enough for every dream they hadn't dared to speak yet, Abigail Whitaker and Cole Brennan sat together on a simple bale of hay, no longer too big for either of them to handle, and watched tomorrow ride in gentle and slow.